Welcome to the Healing Hour with Sarah O'Brien.
Hi guys, happy Thursday. Welcome to another episode of the Healing Hour. My name is Sarah O'Brien. I am the Chief Mental Health Officer of Circle of Friends Club. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I am a vetted and verified trauma-informed leader. And today we're going to be talking about trauma responses. We've had many shows. We've talked about lots of things, burnout, emotional intelligence, suicide prevention, but we haven't really dove into trauma. And this is kind of my whole world, and trauma-informed care is my whole world. And in today's landscape, we need this more than ever before. And trauma-informed care is important because it benefits everybody. It increases pathways to safety, decreases pathways to harm, which all in all is just better for everybody's emotional, mental, and physical health. And when you know all of that, and there's a bunch of science backing all that, I don't know why we're not all doing that. But yet here we are. Just like there's still stigma with mental health care, which is just crazy to me at this point. Especially since it's my career, my profession, and the fact that it's still delegitimatized is crazy. That's actually what's crazy, not people getting mental health care. And so the same with trauma-informed care and trauma-informed leadership. It's crazy to me that everybody's not using this just because of how effective it is. And the science behind it. But, here we are. So if I can do my part, my corner of the world to educate people a little bit more and to maybe increase some compassion and curiosity for individuals' behavior and or difficult behavior, rather than writing people off or causing a lot of conflict, we can maybe approach these things with the idea that a person might have a lived experience of trauma and that's contributing to some of their behavior. And so we're going to talk about some of that behavior today, some of the responses that we can see in people. So I'll do my check-in now that I've opened us up, and I'll take my 3 deep breaths. You're welcome to take them with me to get yourself grounded. Always helps me to organize and streamline what I'm saying to you all, and maybe in a way that you can digest it a little bit better. Where am I at today? I have a lot going on. It has been a hard couple of weeks for me professionally with everything happening over here in the United States. It is impacting people a great bit, and being a therapist to individuals that are struggling a lot right now is a lot. It's a little taxing. I have some stuff going on in my personal life. I'm really busy today. I'm having a little bit hard time focusing my time. And, I'm kind of neutral. I'm not in the best mood. I'm not in the worst mood. You guys have probably seen me more excited and in a more positive headspace. I'm sort of in neutral zone today. We'll see where that takes us. Feel free to drop your check-in in the chat. I love to hear how you are doing today, how you are showing up to this podcast episode. So let's take 3 deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. Try to elongate both your inhale and your exhale. Deep breathing is all around yumminess for your nervous system, for your brain, increases oxygen to your brain. And that increase of oxygen to your brain turns down cortisol output. So it actually reduces the feeling of stress in the body. Deep breathing works faster than Xanax. It doesn't have side effects. You are not at risk of addiction with deep breathing like you are with Xanax. And so you guys heard me say this last week. Deep breathing to me is a slam dunk in terms of a strategy for managing any sort of dysregulation, intense emotion, distraction. And so I really like this as a skill, and it's good for our bodies as well. So not only good for your mind, good for your body. In through your nose, out through your mouth, and we'll get started. First breath in. Number 2. And 3. Okay. Like I said, that always kind of brings me back down to focus to the present moment. Um, Anything that helps us be in the present moment and out of the fear spiraling in our brain, or without distracting entirely with something else, being present in our bodies, being present in our attention, is also good for your mental health. And it's extremely good if you're a person who have experienced past trauma. We don't often live in our bodies. We live sort of outside and above our bodies, because things are uncomfortable there. They're uncomfortable in our nervous systems. So anytime that we can get to some grounding, it's really good all around for your system, and being grounded and present in the right now, um, is really good for your brain and the physiology there, like we're talking about. And if you're a person that has lived experiences of trauma, you need to do this maybe more than the average person. So let's look at some trauma responses. Grab your coffee, take your coffee break. You guys know in the morning, that's what I'm doing. Okay, trauma responses. What are common trauma responses? And what does fight, flight, freeze, and fawn actually mean? First, let's talk about what trauma is. A deeply distressing or disturbing experience that can have a profound physical and emotional impact on a person. It's an experience that overwhelms a person's capacity to cope. I really like this definition, especially an experience that overwhelms a person's capacity to cope. It means like it is out of the scope of your nervous system. It is too much to handle. It is too much to hold. And so then basically you can think about it as like your typical and normal and healthy functioning is just like spilling out all over the place, and we can't contain it, and things are not going well, and it's too much for us to bear. Basically, when that happens, our body and our minds respond in natural ways. We don't have to force them to do this. This is automatic. These are responses to lived experience of trauma, not only in the moment, but when we are activated again in that trauma memory. An activation in your nervous system is formerly known as a trigger. Trauma Informed Care has moved us to a new word or phrase, which is nervous system activation, but a lot of you may know that as trigger. So when you are triggered in your nervous system, triggered in your body, triggered in the trauma, you could exhibit some automatic behaviors that fall into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. I really think it's important to keep in mind that these are involuntary responses or reactions. This is not a choice. People are not choosing to behave this way. They are not out to get people when they're behaving this way. They are having an automatic body response to trauma, a trauma reminder, or a re-experiencing of the trauma event in the present moment. Fight. Do you know what this looks like for you? How about in the people around you? Flight. When are you most likely to flee? Do you notice when others avoid and evade? Freeze. Do you ever just feel paralyzed? Decision making, action, behavior. Do you notice people around you shutting down? And fawn. What does this actually mean? Fight and flight are pretty common. Fight, flight, freeze. More people familiar with. Fawn, probably not as much. So we're going to talk about it, and how to recognize this response in others. Fight responses: anger outbursts, explosive behaviors, controlling behaviors, impulsive decision making, pursuing power and control, demanding perfection from others and potentially self. Now, most people might not consider these fight responses, and it's like, is it actually fighting? Is it physically fighting? Sometimes it can be if we're triggered, but more often than not, it probably looks like anger outbursts. And when we're dysregulated in intense emotions, it's hard to control these reactions, if not impossible. And so this could look like blowing up about things that are uncomfortable, inconvenient. Like I said, activating of the nervous system. It could be an unknown situation. It could be something somebody says. It could be a look that somebody gives. It could be a smell or a scent in the room. It could be just an overall feeling that you have in your body, and it can evoke these fight responses. If this is how you're sort of going to respond in your trauma. Now, as a person who has experienced many traumas, particularly some pretty significant emotional abuse in my childhood and my family system growing up, and as it continues to this day, that has led me to at times being in all of the trauma responses, sometimes fight responses, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so although people typically maybe like have a response or a reaction that's automatic for them when their trauma is activated in their nervous system, in their body, it doesn't mean that that's the only way that they will ever respond to their trauma. So I'm usually a fighter, but that doesn't mean that I don't experience the reactions and responses from the other categories. So if somebody is controlling a lot of things, if you're in a relationship with somebody, or it's a boss, or it's a coworker, this could be because they have a lived experience of trauma. Is it easy to deal with? No. Is it okay? No, not really. However, we can be curious and have compassion for this very difficult behavior we might be seeing or experiencing from another person when we keep in mind trauma-informed principles, which are that this person could have a lived experience of trauma, and that's why they are controlling. That doesn't mean we don't set boundaries around it. It doesn't mean that we maybe don't point it out in a kind and compassionate way and potentially assist this person with working through their trauma, and maybe at least recognizing the patterns of behavior or responses that are not helpful, like the controlling behavior, and address it that way. People tend to get upset or they get pissed off back. And that's not necessarily helpful. And I think when we can keep in mind that this behavior may be a result of trauma, then we can come at it with a little bit more ease. Flight responses, perfectionism tendencies, panic and anxiety, an inability to sit still, obsessive or compulsive tendencies, workaholic tendencies, constant feelings of fear. Okay, now why I'm normally in fight, like that's probably the first thing that comes out when I'm activated in my trauma. I experience all of these things. I'm recovering from perfectionism. I absolutely experience panic and anxiety. You can probably notice right now I'm not really sitting still as I move around in my chair. I have been diagnosed with OCD, so I definitely have obsessive and compulsive tendencies. I just wrote an article and did a podcast with my buddy last week on achievement addiction, which is basically being a workaholic. And I definitely have those responses, and constant feelings of fear have absolutely been living in my body. And experiencing these things, as you can imagine, make it hard to function, let alone function in normal and healthy ways, let alone function in normal and healthy ways that get along with others. These responses can be really difficult to be present for and or be close to. Like if this is somebody you're in a relationship with or in a friendship with, or like I said, a working relationship, a coworker, a supervisor, an employee, staff, whatever. That doesn't mean that we don't address these things in healthy ways, but it can be difficult. Thank you, Margaret, for your tuning in and your comment. I'm glad that you are finding it useful and helpful. Hi, Carolyn. Good morning. It's good to see you. I'm so happy to see that you've joined. I hope this is going to be helpful for you. I know that you and I both know a lot about trauma, as Carolyn and I have worked on some projects in the past. Hi, Sam. Good morning to you, friend. I'm so happy to see that you've dropped in. I hope that you're learning something this morning. We are catching up on flight responses. So if you see somebody who's trying to be perfect and then anxious and trying to be perfect, or working a bunch extra, maybe it's somebody you're in a relationship with, this could be a flight response to their trauma. Freeze responses: isolation, disassociation, frequent zoning out, daydreaming, difficulty taking actions, difficulty making decisions, fear of achieving or trying new things. Okay, this is like an exact opposite of achievement addiction or being a workaholic, which is like an escape route. The flight route is sort of escapism. Freeze is exactly what you think of. I'm paralyzed. I can't do anything. I'm stuck. Disassociation, a lot happens in here because we're stuck and not doing anything, that we tend to like come out of ourselves and sort of watch what we're doing. We feel disconnected from our bodies, from our lives, from the physical world around us. That's what dissociation means. They could be spacing out and zoning out. Again, this might be somebody you work with or somebody you lead at work. They may have difficulty making decisions or being definitive in their choices. These all look like freeze responses, which is really just a paralyzation from fear, that gets kicked up from re-experiencing trauma, or that being activated in your nervous system, or a way to deal with the trauma as it's happening. Freeze responses and dissociation is often what we see in children, especially if they are experiencing abuse situations. And if adults who experienced abuse as children, they're more likely to experience dissociation, because as a kid, you don't have a lot of options for managing or protecting yourself from abuse. We are dependent on the adults around us when we are children, and that doesn't give us an option a lot of times to fight or to flee. And so freezing and just zoning out and not being connected to their body or to their experience is quite common. And this is also why I talk a lot about grounding. I do those deep breaths. I talk about being in the present moment, because if you experience childhood trauma or abuse, dissociation could be like a very regular part of life for you, where you disconnect from yourself, you disconnect from your physical body, your emotional experiences, from the world around you, also from the people around you, in an effort to save yourself or to protect yourself. Now, that's what we need to keep in mind here, folks. These are responses in self-protection for people that are automatic, that their body and brains have learned to use to manage the trauma or manage the negative impact of that trauma. Again, we need to have compassion and kindness for folks exhibiting these types of responses or behaviors. Okay, Fawn responses. Yes, Margaret, 100% patience would be great. Curiosity and compassion is where we have to start. Curiosity and compassion essentially should come with no judgment. So just being open to hearing and understanding somebody's experience, maybe why they engage in these responses. Maybe they don't recognize it, but we're still being open and curious with individuals. If their behaviors or these responses have a negative impact on us. We don't have to come with judgment and with anger and with conflict. We can still approach something that is difficult for us in a calm, compassionate, caring way with another person. Fawn responses. This can look like having a lack of their own identity, big on people-pleasing behaviors. These folks have little to no boundaries, often find themselves in codependent relationships, will say they feel taken advantage of, and often prioritizing other needs over their own. Like I said, folks, I have fallen into every bucket of these responses as a result of my trauma or reactions and responses to re-experiencing my trauma. And most of my traumas happened interpersonally and relationally. So for me, these things come up in relationships. So these things could very well just come up in a conversation that I have with somebody. And my nervous system is hypervigilant and primed for anything that might be damaging to me relationally. And so sometimes I fight and I'm controlling. Sometimes I'm flight, where I'm perfectionist and a workaholic. Sometimes I am freeze, where I am disassociated or not connected to myself. And sometimes I fawn, where I just do what other people want to make it easier. I found myself in codependent relationships, definitely prioritizing other needs over my own. All of those things have a negative impact on me as well, including the anger outbursts. It's really disruptive for my nervous system to be sort of in that heightened, dysregulated state in an anger outburst. And it leads to a lot of negative self talk. I feel physically exhausted afterwards. A whole host of other physiological things that go on as well as these. So anybody that's experiencing these, another reason we need to have compassion is because this is not fun for people. These are automatic responses as a result of their lived experiences of trauma, and they're not comfortable for the person who is experiencing it, just as much, if not more, than it is uncomfortable for the people around the person experiencing these things. These are difficult behavior, folks. Like I recognize that. They're difficult behaviors for me to deal with in others. They're difficult behaviors for me to deal with and accept and admit that I engage in myself. However, trauma-informed care and trauma-informed leadership says that we lead with compassion for our common humanity, which means that nobody is perfect and we're all struggling in some way. And if you have lived experiences of trauma, you could potentially be struggling in more ways than people who don't have lived experiences of trauma. And we need to have a sensitivity to that. We can't ask people to extrapolate themselves from their experiences. It just doesn't work. These things live inside of us and are interwoven into not only our physiological systems, but our cognitive thinking, into our behavior patterns, into communication, into conflict resolution. And so, although they can be difficult to deal with, having compassion as we manage these behaviors within ourselves, self-compassion and compassion for other people if they're struggling with these behaviors, is huge. Um, and these things, if you are somebody that's experiencing these responses, you're going to need to do some trauma work. And I get it. It's not fun. I've been doing it myself. Not fun. Recognizing all the poor patterns of behaviors that you've picked up because of your trauma, not only their negative impact on you, but their negative impact on the people around you, is not fun to confront. That's accountability, folks. And that's taking responsibility. Is it my fault that I experienced childhood trauma? No, it's my parents' fault and my family system's fault. They perpetuated that. However, its negative impact on me flows out and potentially has negative impact on others. And so I need to manage that. It's now my responsibility to do something with these trauma responses. Um, and it is an effort. It's an ongoing effort. Christine, I feel you. Yeah, learning to put my needs above others is a constant effort. And it's not top of mind, ironically. I'm a giver, I'm a helper, I'm a therapist. That's what I do. I think I'm a natural caretaker in that way, and I'm very relationally focused. I'm very relationally focused a lot because of my past relational trauma, and also like really desiring close relationships like a normal human being. We all want that, and it's so funny how we can easily just lose sight of making too many compromises in order to please other people or to not rock the boat or to not have people upset with us. It's almost a really subtle, like, sacrifice, that just builds up over time. And people pleasing behaviors almost, if we don't address them, almost always result in resentment, because we are not doing things that feel good for us. We are doing things that other people expect or feel good for other people, and are not good for us. And after a while, that can have a lot of wear and tear and increase resentment towards the people around you because you are doing what they want or what they expect, and that does not align with you. And if those things are not congruent, then it is going to cause friction. And so this is either going to come out towards other people as resentment, or it's going to be sort of like self-hatred that you aren't doing what you need to do for yourself. We have to address these things, folks. They're not going to go away on their own. They're not going to go away on their own. If you are experiencing these trauma responses, it is active work. It is intentional work that takes effort to change cognitive patterns in your brain and to change patterns of behavior. It's not to say we invalidate your trauma. That these responses very much indicate that you have trauma. And like I said, we can have compassion and curiosity for that, as well as holding people accountable to do their own work so that they are not perpetuating negative impact on all the people around them. This is how we stop incurring more trauma and perpetuating more trauma on other people. Trauma informed care addresses both of those. And like I said, is beneficial for everybody, whether you experience trauma or not. Approaching people relationships in any capacity with non-judgmental curiosity is excellent. And we need to also turn that inward and have non-judgment curiosity for ourselves and compassion for ourselves when we recognize that we are in these unhealthy trauma responses. Not easy. I'm not good at self-compassion, guys. I'm really, really good at other compassion and empathy. And I am really, really hard on myself, even though I know perfection is impossible. It is a hardwired, well ingrained message that I must do my absolute best 24/7, anyways. And that's a lot of wear and tear, guys. It takes a lot of capacity to do that. And then if I don't do it well, I'm really good about beating myself up. So, when I say self compassion, I understand that it's not easy for people. I understand that it's maybe a weird concept for people. I understand that a lot of people don't focus on their internal dialogue or internal message or self talk. However, these are all things that we need to be intentional about if we're going to make changes here. Okay, let's take a look at some little bit more concrete examples. So some unhealthy fighting over small things like the dishes or minor inconveniences or mistakes that others make that don't really have a lot of impact, but you just, lose it over these things. Definitely guilty of this. And it's 100% from trauma. Getting defensive about criticism or feedback. So, again, folks, if we think about workplaces, trauma informed leadership and trauma informed care, if a leader is getting defensive about feedback, it could be from trauma. If an employee or staff is getting defensive about feedback from their supervisor or from the leader, this could be a response of trauma. So this could be a way that a trauma fight response shows up, getting defensive when somebody addresses something with you. It can just be really hard to tolerate that. And so your, natural reaction and protector comes out, which is to be defensive. I'm not saying these behaviors are okay, guys. I'm saying we know where they come from and we can have compassion and curiosity and non-judgment for these things that we see. So if your partner or spouse is fighting with you over small things, it might be this unhealthy fight response. If somebody at work is getting really defensive when you give them feedback, it could be one of these trauma fight responses. I just want you guys to keep that in mind. Unhealthy flight responses, ending relationships quickly for fear of getting hurt or incurring some more trauma. So instead, we just exit. Shutting down emotionally to avoid vulnerability. This can definitely show up in relationships. This is often also linked to anxious avoidant attachment. And we know that anxious avoidant attachment is also born out of an unhealthy or traumatic childhood. And children in those situations learn to shut down to avoid causing more problems, pretty much. And also, we're not facilitated in sharing their own feelings or experiences. So that's what this can look like in adults. Again, if your partner or spouse is somebody that shuts down emotionally, this can be an unhealthy flight response to a trauma. So it's maybe being curious about what led them to shutting down in this moment or closing off, or, ending a relationship or ending a friendship. It's being curious about these things rather than judging people for these things. We need to have self-awareness to make changes. If we are the one fighting over small things, getting defensive, ending relationships quickly, or shutting down emotionally. And I think it's important to note no one is stuck like this without hope or ability to change. I'm in a unique position and profession as a psychotherapist where I get to see transformational change happen all the time. One of my specialties, of course, is treating trauma and trauma responses. And I've had some clients that have some significant and many um, traumatic experiences in life. And I get to see the remarkable change that they are able to make into a healthier version of themselves, and they do not stay stuck in these trauma responses. So I have seen firsthand how it happens with people, and I am currently, in the throes. I've been working on this myself, and I see the changes. So even if you're just recognizing this stuff in yourself for the first time and it can feel heavy, like, oh shit, what do I do now? Um, don't panic. Awareness is the first step to making any kind of change. Okay, unhealthy freeze, the silent treatment and refusing to communicate, struggling to express needs. So, I mean, this could literally be somebody who just like shuts down in a conversation and doesn't respond. That could be extremely frustrating. I have experienced this literally sitting across from somebody, asking questions, talking with them, and they just say nothing. It's incredibly frustrating and difficult to deal with. And it's also not about me, even though I am experiencing my own frustration. It may be anger and irritation in that moment. That person giving the silent treatment, refusing to communicate, or struggling to express their thoughts and needs is a result of something that they are going through or that they have experienced in the past. Is it difficult? Is it a difficult behavior to deal with? Yes. Do we need to attack them for it? No. This is where trauma informed care is important. It is still approaching these people, engaging in these behaviors with open, non judgmental curiosity and compassion, even though it's difficult. This is how we get to collective healing, guys. And this is how we end collective trauma and perpetuating individual and interpersonal traumas. Unhealthy fawn can show up in apologizing for everything or constantly seeking approval or validation from others, from outside themselves. You might know somebody who apologizes for everything. I do. I can think of this person right now, and they know they apologize too much. And I love her with all of my heart. And it's an unhealthy fawn response to wanting things to be peaceful, calm, not wanting to disrupt relationships. And it's not good in the long run. These are another one of those ways that we can become resentful or feel like we're taken advantage of because our needs aren't getting met. We aren't voicing them. We're doing what other people want instead of doing what we want or what we need to for ourselves. Self-awareness, again, is going to bring us back to ourselves and what we need. Often these unhealthy nervous system responses, like I've said, are due to past experiences of trauma and or fall into having one of the anxious attachment styles, which I've also talked a lot about and written a lot about. And I actually think some of my early Healing Hour episodes are on attachment styles. So check those out. Check out some of those early episodes. Oh, thank you for that, Sam. I'm so glad that this is awesome information that you are picking up. I appreciate that. Okay, that's like all the content I have. Not Christine. Yes. In your marriage, fawning or pleasing, I feel that sacrificing myself for the relationship, for the other person's needs, has made me real sick in the past and real codependent. And you really have to disentangle yourself from finding your worth and or peace in relationships with others and really finding your worth and or peace within yourself. That takes effort, guys, especially in close relationships. Like, especially one like a marriage, like you're saying, Christine. Like, it is really hard to extrapolate yourself back into an independent being if this is how you've gotten caught up in stuff, and show up appropriately in the relationship for the other person and for yourself without falling into these fawn and codependent behaviors. It's not easy, guys. And so if you find yourself engaging in any of this, you need a therapist. I'm just going to say it. I don't care how you feel about it. I don't care what you think about mental health. I don't care if you think a coach is better. It's not. We're talking about trauma responses, then we're talking about mental health treatment. And we're often not going to get beyond these things without actual help and accountability and care and support while we do this work. So, if you live in Virginia and Maryland, I could be your therapist. If you live outside of those states, I cannot be your therapist, but I encourage you to find one that specializes in trauma so that they can help you manage and walk back these trauma responses and learn some healthier ways to be with yourself and to be with other people. How else can I help you? Like I said, vetted and verified trauma-informed professional in terms of trauma-informed leadership strategy, mental health expertise. I have a freebie for you guys. And so all this information on the slides today, I put conveniently in a little one-pager handout, and you can find that in the free resources section on my website at www.sarahobrianlcsw.com. That is Sarah with an H. That is O'Brien with an E. LCSW.com. Look in the free resources section and you should find one that says trauma responses. Click on that and you get it right away. You can download that PDF and have this quick reference guide for these responses, and keep it on your fridge, keep it at your desk, keep it on the community bulletin board. Does not hurt for people to understand that these responses that might be difficult to deal with in other people are actually trauma responses, and we need to have care and compassion for folks exhibiting these behaviors. I'm not saying tolerating it to your own detriment or deficit. I'm saying having care and compassion for other people exhibiting these behaviors. How else can I help you? I have a couple of digital download products. My self-care kit is one of my compassionate self kits. So like Christine's talking about, working on it daily, these things can help you work on it daily. There are guides, there are journal prompts, there are affirmations included in the self-care kit. You actually get 60 printable affirmation cards that you can take with you, that again, you can post somewhere, and have these available so that we can change some of those faulty cognitive messages that are born out of trauma, which lead to these unhealthy and faulty and poor patterns of behavior. So a lot of it starts in telling ourselves something different. Like I said, self-compassion, not easy for me. Focusing on my own needs and not the needs of others, not easy for me. This is basically what self-care is, and this is what I focus on in the self-care kit. Another thing that you'll get in there is an inventory that sort of goes through a checklist to tell you where you are sort of in your self-care ability. Like, are you doing it well now? Are you covering all the areas, or are you really lacking in a lot of your self-care areas? So you can sort of get a checkup there. And then, of course, there are journal prompts and tracking things and ways for you to really turn back focus on what you need on actual care for yourself. And we have to do that first before we can show up for anybody else. I also have what I call the Self-Care Love and Growth Workbook. It's a little bit less expensive than the self-care kit, and this has lots of journal prompts, self-care tips, and habit trackers for all different kinds of self-care things, whether you want to track healthy movement, or you want to track water intake, or you want to track sleep habits, or you want to track relational interactions. There's lots in there. It's only $9. You can go right on my website right now under Compassionate Self Kits and get that. It will come to you via email. You don't even have to interface with me. So guys, I have purposely created resources to help you. I know it can be hard to step into a therapist's office, to call a provider of any kind, to ask for help, to set up a coaching or consultation call with me, or to set up an intake assessment for psychotherapy with me. And we may not be ready for the step where somebody else is going to be a part of our journey, that we kind of want to get into it ourselves first. I totally get that. I'm a little bit reserved in that way. I will read, self-help books and psychology books and other treatment books and journal often before I will talk to somebody else. And so that's why I've created these things where you don't even have to interface with me. You can just go access these resources and start taking better care of yourself, which is good enough for me. I don't need to interface with you to know that you got that and you're doing that, because that's going to be beneficial not only to you, but to the people around you. And my whole message via the Healing Hour and my whole brand and platform with Trauma Informed Leadership and Trauma Informed Care is just aiming to reach as many people as possible with this healing information so people can start doing that. It benefits everybody for people to heal from their past trauma, not just you, although that's the biggest thing. So grab one of those kits or the freebie or both. Like I said, if you are outside Virginia and Maryland, I do offer coaching services. So one-to-one support for reaching your goals. I have packages for those that sort of cut down on the cost. If you have something that you want to work towards, like let's say it is you want to increase, positive self-talk and affirmations, and we can set up like goals and a timeline for you to get to that. So you can reach out to me for that. And then if you want community support, of course, you can join the Circle of Friends Club, either with a Friends membership or a business membership. A business membership gets you a business listing and access to some more things on our site and within our community. But there is the option for a free Friends membership. And this is where we're just collecting people all over the world that need a community that supports mental health and good mental health, positive mental health, and community and connection. One of the other ways that we heal from trauma is in community with other people, in relationship with other people. This can be really hard if you experience relational trauma, yet we all still need that. So, again, if it's hard for you to step into like an in-person community and be vulnerable with this stuff, step into our virtual community. You can lurk for a little bit. You don't necessarily have to participate, but you can find resources there, and hope, and other people that are focused, committed, and prioritize mental wellness. So you can join Circle of Friends Club to gain access to a community that values and supports mental wellness, as well as connection to other people. We are not meant to be alone in this world, and so we need to be connected to others. That's all I have for you guys today. I went over who I was in the beginning, and thank you for joining me. Visit my website, send me an email, grab your self-care kit or your workbook. And if you do grab one of those, I would love to know what you think of it. So feel free to drop me an email or a DM on LinkedIn to let me know how the kit was helpful to you, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it. If you have any suggestions, I'm always open for that. I'm appreciative of all my friends and individuals who showed up today to get a little bit more information about trauma responses. I hope this helps you heal a little bit more yourself, and or maybe helps you to help somebody else to heal a little bit more around you. We need to be taking care of each other, guys, especially right now. There's a lot of scary stuff happening, a lot of unknown, a lot of uncertainty, and we need to be there for each other and not fight with one another, but support one another. So try to do that. Increase your self-awareness. If things get to be too much, you can always come back to some deep breathing. I think in the last couple of my shows, I've forgotten to do a checkout. I get going with the content and talking to you all, and I get caught up in that and forget my checkout. Oh, you're welcome, Carolyn. I'm so glad that you popped in. And so I guess if I check out, I'm actually feeling a little more up than I did when I started. And I think that's because some of my friends dropped in for my show today and engaged with me and left me messages. And I appreciate that so much. I am, you know, just a normal person located here in Richmond, Virginia, putting on the show in hopes of helping other people heal. I'm not famous. I'm probably not exciting for a lot of people. So I appreciate anybody that is viewing my content. My hope is just to reach more people with the healing message and ways, actual practical, tangible ways that you can address these things for yourself and or assist somebody around you with some compassionate care so that we can all reach more healing and collective healing and actually be in community with each other and find value and benefit in that. And it's hard if we're just judging everybody for their poor patterns behavior or we're engaging in poor patterns behavior that we don't want to take a look at. Those things wreak havoc on relationships, and we need relationships and we need each other. So take care of yourself first and always, then extend care to other people. I'll see you next week. We're probably going to be talking a little bit more about trauma. February is a big month for me in that, and I'll share more in some other episodes about why February is a big month for me and remembering and recognizing a lot of trauma and trauma responses in myself. So we're going to be focusing on that a lot in. So, thanks guys for tuning in. I will see you next week, Thursday at 11, for another episode of The Healing Hour. Have a great weekend.
Thank you for watching The Healing Hour with Sarah O'Brien. See you next time.